Hi, welcome to Tom's Dojo. I'm Tom Carroll. Today we're going to learn to make an American Southern breakfast favorite, buttermilk biscuits and sausage gravy. This is fast, it's inexpensive, delicious, and filling. It takes about 45 minutes from start to finish. Let's get to it. Before we begin, preheat your oven to 450 degrees. Let's make the buttermilk biscuits first. This recipe calls for 2 cups of all-purpose flour, measured by spooning the flour into the measuring cup and then leveling off the top using a dough scraper or the back of a knife. Normally, biscuits are made with self-rising flour. You can create a substitute by adding baking powder, baking soda, and salt to all-purpose flour. Let's add 1 tablespoon of baking powder. Next, we're going to add 1/4 teaspoon of baking soda. And finally, 1/2 teaspoon of fine sea salt. Next, let's combine the dry ingredients using a whisk. To the dry ingredients, we're going to add 6 tablespoons of grated frozen butter, or you can use chopped butter if you like. The idea is to keep it cold so the butter retains its shape. Using a pastry cutter or a couple of forks, cut the butter into the flour. The idea is to create pea-sized butter pieces that are coated with flour. Next, add 1 cup of cold buttermilk to the flour mixture. You want to keep the buttermilk cold so it doesn't melt the butter. Using a spatula or a spoon, gently mix the buttermilk into the flour. You want to be gentle here and not mix too much or you'll make your biscuits tough. Just stir it in till the ingredients come together into a very shaggy mass. Flour your table and turn your dough out onto the floured surface. We're going to want to shape this dough into a rectangle and flatten it down and fold it like a book. And we're going to make 5 of these folds. This is fold number 1. Between folds, straighten it up and kind of flatten your dough down. Here's fold number 2. What we're doing here is we're building layers of flaky goodness. Again, you don't want to overhandle your dough. I'm getting a little too excited with the dough here. I could handle it less than this. I find it's useful to use a dough scraper to help with the folds. Now, tidy the dough up and flatten it down so that it's about 1 inch tall. I can tell it's 1 inch tall because I use the end of my index finger, and that bone is about 1 inch long. You can use a biscuit cutter to stamp out your biscuits, or I use an old soup can. Put your biscuits on a sheet pan or a cookie tray lined with parchment paper. Stamp out your biscuits. You should be able to get at least 3 biscuits out of your first fold. If you don't have parchment paper, you can just grease your pan. This recipe makes 6 or 7 biscuits. Now what I want to do is to push my dough together so that it's still, about 1 inch tall. Add a little more flour if it gets sticky. I should be able to get 2 biscuits out of this fold. Just repeat the process. If you want to avoid the hassle of having to reform your biscuit dough every time you stamp a biscuit, just make square biscuits. Square up that biscuit dough and cut out 6 beautiful, tall, fluffy biscuits. By this time, your oven should be preheated. Put the biscuits in and set your timer for 12 minutes. Let's make some gravy. Start by browning a pound of breakfast sausage. I used Jimmy Dean's sage-flavored sausage. To the brown sausage, add 2 tablespoons of bacon grease, or butter if you don't have bacon grease. My timer started ringing, so it's time to pull the biscuits out. They've been in for 12 minutes, and they're brown on the top and brown on the bottom. Turn down your stovetop to medium and add 3 tablespoons of AP flour. We're creating a roux here, which is just equal parts of fat and flour used to thicken the gravy. Now you go ahead and just stir in the flour until it's all absorbed. And then we're going to add milk, 2 cups of milk to the mixture. A little bit at a time, just a half a cup. Stir it around and watch for the gravy to thicken. You'll begin to see it thicken. When it gets hard to move the meat around, add a little more milk. Keep stirring. And you'll see that gravy thicken up again. Add a little bit more when it gets thick. Keep stirring. And in a moment, you'll want to season your gravy. I'll use a little bit of salt and pepper, and usually some garlic powder or onion powder. I don't add the salt and pepper until I taste, but I will put a little garlic powder in before tasting. There's a sprinkle of garlic powder. Now I'll get a couple of spoons for tasting. And this needed a little bit of salt and a couple of cranks of pepper. Notice I have a little dog visit me to see if there was any leftover sausage scraps. Now it's important to do a final tasting to make sure you got the seasoning right. And this was just perfect. Serve your hot gravy right away over your biscuits. I'm a little embarrassed to admit it that I didn't get the final shot of me eating this delicious meal because I started eating as soon as the gravy hit the biscuits. It was so tasty. Next time I'll use a little more restraint. If you found this video useful and want to comment, hit the subscribe button, give the video a thumbs up, and share it with your friends. If you'd like to receive notices of future posts, ring the bell icon next to the subscribe button. Thanks for listening. Best wishes on your baking. I'll see you next week in the dojo.